Alex Salmond launches a rival party to take on Nicola Sturgeon at the polls. The previous SNP leader says he'll field candidates in Scotland's upcoming election, but just how much of an impact will it have on his former party and former ally?
Alba will contest the upcoming Scottish elections as a list-only party under my leadership, seeking to build a supermajority for independence in the Scottish Parliament.
Also tonight, falling COVID infection rates are levelling off, just as England and Wales plan to ease restrictions. Thousands of Asda workers win a key legal battle over equal pay, which could end up costing the supermarket chain millions. And how a new set of wheels has given Stephen the Lamb a new lease of life.
This is the ITV Evening News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good evening. Alex Salmond today made a surprise return to the political stage, launching his own pro-independence party and pitching himself against his former friend turned rival Nicola Sturgeon. Called Alba, it aims to build what the former First Minister of Scotland described as a supermajority for independence in the May elections. But it comes in the wake of the highly public and highly damaging dispute between him, Nicola Sturgeon, and the SNP. Here's Paul Davies on the controversial comeback.
He is back. Some might question if he ever really went away.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm announcing the public launch of a new political force, the Alba Party.
Accompanied by stirring music and patriotic images, the new leader of this new party said its birth would pile pressure on Westminster to grant Scotland a second independence referendum.
Boris Johnson has already said no to the SNP proposals. He will find it much more difficult to say no to a parliament and a country.
But the SNP was not exactly welcoming the creation of a new independence ally when it issued this barbed response to today's launch.
Forgive me, I'm just not factoring Alex Salmond into the equation. That is not part of our thinking. It's not part of our strategy moving forward. It never has been in the last number of years. So that is just not a factor for us.
Alex Salmond says Alba's strategy does not include taking on his former protégé Nicola Sturgeon or the party he used to lead head-to-head, but instead using Scotland's political system to increase the prospects of independence. Scotland elects 129 MSPs. One for each of the 73 constituencies. Alba will not be contesting those. But Scotland also elects a further 56 MSPs by region, 7 for each of the 8 regions, decided by proportional representation. Alba is putting up at least 4 candidates in each region, including its leader.
The most immediate risk to the SNP of this tactic is that Mr Salmond ends up taking some crucial seats away from the SNP and maybe along the way doesn't himself succeed in getting elected or any of his other colleagues.
Many experts say parties like the Greens are the most likely to be squeezed by Alba.
This election should be about the future of Scotland. It should be about how we recover from the pandemic, how we tackle the climate crisis, how we secure our future as an independent country. It should not get dragged into this very, very sad sideshow.
Today's development will certainly add pressure to the already splintered relationship between Scotland's current leader and her mentor and predecessor at the end of a week when she was cleared of breaking the ministerial code. Paul Davies, ITV News.
Well, let's join our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith, who is in Glasgow tonight. Peter, what impacts might Alex Salmond's party have on the election?
That is the golden question. Well, if you look at the numbers here, the SNP are polling so well that they could get an overall majority in the Scottish Parliament just by standing on the constituency vote that Paul was talking about in his report. But if they fall just short, they need a couple of extra MSPs to come in from the list system in Scotland's additional representation system. They need every vote to count in those lists, and Alex Salmond's party could do them some damage. Now, if Alex Salmond's Alba party are going to have any chance, roughly they need to get about 6% of the vote in Scotland. We've no idea how popular they are right now, but if we take his personal polling right now, He's a well-known politician, former First Minister. He does have some credibility. He's roughly about 7%, so that suggests that they could make a dent on that list system. Initially, it's mostly an immediate threat to the Scottish Green Party, who are also a pro-independence party. But we could face ourselves in a situation that if Alex Salmond can support Nicola Sturgeon, the two of them could be formidable opponents for Boris Johnson trying to get a mandate for Indy Rev 2. Otherwise, it could be Alex Salmond seeking Nicola Sturgeon to be dependent on him, and that takes the psychodrama between those two up to a whole new level.
All right, Peter, thank you. There was yet more encouraging news about the coronavirus outbreak today as millions of people look forward to restrictions being lifted over the next few days. Well, from Monday, lockdown is eased in England with people allowed to meet outside again and play outdoor sports. And from tomorrow, travel restrictions are lifted in Wales. Well, the latest data showed 6,187 new infections across the UK, a slight rise over the past week. There were 70 further deaths. That's a fall of more than a quarter over the week. And more than 29 million people have had their first vaccine dose. Here's our science editor, Tom Clark.
Here's to this weekend being the last time a screen comes between us and our loved ones.
Hello! Finally, we are doing the meeting together. The lockdown is coming to an end.
Like families across England, the Maheshwaris in London are looking forward to Monday when 6 people or 2 households are allowed to meet outdoors or in gardens and see their kids face to face.
It's been very, very hard for us, but for my kids it's been even harder. My son had his birthday and he couldn't meet his brothers and friends, which was like terrible, you know, celebrating your birthday alone.
In lifting restrictions, the government said it would be led by data, not dates. So how reassuring are the latest numbers? Overall, the COVID test results show how far we've come, from 60,000 testing positive each day in January to less than 5,500 a day now. But focusing on the most recent weeks, and infection levels are flat. One likely reason seen in today's numbers from the Office for National Statistics, infection rates in both primary and secondary school children rising slightly, where infection rates in most other age groups continue to fall.
I think that's what we expected when we opened schools. Schools are part of society. They're involved in transmission. Schools aren't the great accelerators of transmission some fear them to be. And the good news is we're about to close schools for 2 weeks. You could call it a fire break. And this is part of the plan to tiptoe slowly out of lockdown. So I don't think we should be too concerned. We should be vigilant, however.
Perhaps not surprising given the data that the Department for Education this evening extended the requirement for mask wearing in secondary schools into next term. But children can at least look forward to playing more outdoors. At this football club in Leicestershire, the ground's being prepared for outdoor sports to resume on Monday too. And it's more than just a game, of course.
I like playing the games, but I love being with my friends as well.
I think it's just like human contact, really. I think like we've been going out doing exercises, but just us two.
Given infections are no longer falling, a lot depends on how carefully we stick to next week's new rules. If infections do rise, it could be the own goal that relegates further lifting of restrictions to later in the spring.
So, Tom, is it fair to say that things are broadly looking quite positive, but also ahead of some restrictions being lifted over the next few days as well?
Yeah, I think it would have been too much to hope with schools going back that the outbreak would continue to shrink. And we are seeing good signs that infections are still dropping in other age groups, which is the encouraging thing. But of course, these are uncertain times. We haven't seen the new variant of COVID really let off the leash in a way. The restrictions that are being lifted on Monday, in theory, shouldn't make much of a difference, provided people stick to the rules. And I think that's what the people monitoring this, the government scientists, are really going to be looking out for, is what is the response to that? Because there are a few concerns. Will people be tempted because of vaccination, maybe, feeling a bit more overconfident to bend those rules, to go indoors? And that's where we know the virus does spread. How capable is our test and trace system to stay on top of little clusters, which we're inevitably going to get of cases? How quickly can we suppress those? And also there's obviously that question of new variants coming in from other parts of the world, and obviously rates of new variants in France are on the increase, for example, something we need to be on the guard for. But at the moment, things look good enough to proceed. We have to wait till we see the response from that easing next week before we make that next decision about easing restrictions further in April.
All right, Tom, thank you. Well, the easing of restrictions in Wales will mean from tomorrow people living in Wales can go on holiday to other parts of the nation. Self-contained tourist accommodation like hotels can open. Organised outdoor activities and sports for under 18s can start again, and 6 people from 2 households can meet up outdoors. In England, it was also confirmed today shops will be able to open until 10 p.m, 6 days a week when they welcome back customers from April the 12th. The government said the extended opening hours will help shoppers return safely. And you can see more about the changes planned across the UK on our website, itv.com/news. The Community Secretary has said he is deeply troubled by protests outside the school where a teacher showed pupils a cartoon depicting the Prophet Muhammad. Robert Jenrick urged those demonstrating to go home. Well, the teacher concerned has been suspended and is now reportedly in hiding. Ben Chapman reports from West Yorkshire.
In front of padlocked school gates, protesters took the place of pupils once again at Batley Grammar this morning. There were around 50 men, still not satisfied with the school's apology after cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad were shown to a class.
We do not accept that the school has taken this issue seriously, given that it's taken them 4 days to merely suspend only one of the teachers involved.
The school has apologised, suspended the teacher. Is that not enough?
You know, apology, what are they going to do, sir? We need to send a right message and, get a right ideology. Nobody should not allowed to speak against any religion.
The protest here this morning has been quiet and peaceful, but the worry about a repeat of much noisier scenes yesterday prompted the school to ask pupils to stay at home today. Yesterday's protest was condemned as intimidating by government ministers who said teachers should be allowed to appropriately show images of the Prophet. Some fear the issue is being hijacked by extremists.
We do need to teach children the ability to question everything, not just religion, but other issues as well. But all subjects, whether they're around religion or gender or sexuality or other forms of identity, are done so in schools in a way which is conducive to positive learning.
Most Muslims believe all images of the Prophet Muhammad are an insult and forbidden in Islam. A local mosque holding Friday prayers today has invited the teacher to visit. Like many parents at the school, this imam says dialogue is the answer.
We understand everybody's emotions, but I think protest may not be the best way forward. Maybe sitting down and educating and talking and discussing might be the better way.
A petition by a pupil supporting the teacher now has 12,000 signatures. And while these protests have reignited a debate between the freedom of teachers to teach and religious sensitivity, they are at the expense of children who are missing more lessons. Ben Chapman, ITV News, West Yorkshire.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News. Thousands of Asda workers win a key battle in their claim for equal pay. And we'll meet Stephen the Lamb, whose new wheels have given him a spring in his step. Those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. Pupils and former pupils from some of England's leading private schools have been making allegations of rape, sexual assault and harassment. The anonymous claims are being shared online and are growing all the time. And now the schools are being urged to help tackle the toxic culture of abuse. Neil Connery has more.
It's a stark message attached to a school's railings. Outside this London independent school today, a small protest was held as concerns over a culture of sexual abuse and harassment in some of the country's other private schools grow. Serious allegations have been made online to the Everyone's Invited website, which urges young sexual abuse survivors to share their stories.
I only have small flashbacks to him doing stuff to me. I was 11 years old. I was told to just ignore him, that boys will be boys. He pinned me against the wall.
just having these conversations, talking about it, having the word rape culture in the press, in the public consciousness, people understanding what it means is, a huge step and achievement in the short term, I believe.
A former male pupil at Dulwich College has written an open letter which includes 250 anonymous stories from girls who went to nearby schools, alleging they suffered from the behaviour of some Dulwich students.
The head teacher of Dulwich College told parents yesterday that he'd reported some pupils to police after receiving allegations of sexual harassment. He said he condemns unreservedly the behaviours and attitudes reported in the open letter.
With some private schools facing scrutiny over the issue, the headmaster of Wellington School says equality and respect must come first.
We want boys to be more emotionally intelligent and socially sensitive, and we want girls to be confident, to say what they want in whichever way they want, obviously with nuance, with sensitivity, with tact, but we want a society in Wellington where girls and boys can really work together.
But as the voices of concern grow, England's Child Commissioner has called the allegations alarming and says schools have clear advice to follow. Neil Connery, ITV News.
At least 32 people have been killed and 108 more injured when 2 trains crashed in southern Egypt. The country's Ministry of Health said one of the trains was a passenger train that had stopped in the Tata district, causing 3 carriages to flip over. And a traffic jam of ships is growing in the Red Sea as dredgers and tugboats continue efforts to dislodge a giant container ship stuck in the Suez Canal. The Ever Given is one of the world's largest cargo ships and became grounded on Tuesday after high winds pushed it sideways as it entered the canal. Thousands of Asda supermarket workers have won a key legal battle in their claim for equal pay. The Supreme Court ruled that the staff, most of them women, do a job that is comparable to workers in distribution depots, mainly men, who get paid more. Well, legal experts say the ruling will have far-reaching effects, as Martha Fairley reports.
Wendy Arundale organised events for an Asda store in Middlesbrough during the 30 years she worked for the supermarket. Her husband had a similar role in the distribution depot, but was being paid more.
Both of us did the same role, but he was paid more than I was. Yes, it annoyed me, it makes me feel a little bit cheesed off. Why should that happen? We're now in the 21st century. We should be equal. It's about time we were equal.
More than 40,000 store workers, mainly women, claim Asda unfairly paid higher wages to workers in its distribution depots, who were mainly men. And the Supreme Court's ruled they can compare the jobs for the purposes of an equal pay claim.
The court's conclusion does not mean that those claimants have won their equal pay claims. At this stage, all the court has determined is that they can use the terms and conditions of employment enjoyed by the distribution employees as a valid comparison.
The Supreme Court ruling paves the way for the next phase in this complex legal claim. Store workers will now have to prove that their job is of equal value to that carried out by distribution depot workers. And that's something the lawyers representing the store workers are confident they can do.
The roles are equally difficult. They are different, but the demands are really difficult. Ultimately, retail staff, for example, are customer facing. Distribution centres don't have to deal with that. How do you measure that? And ultimately, we think that it's time, obviously, that the value of the roles are taken into consideration.
Asda has responded to the ruling, saying, "We are defending these claims because the pay in our stores and distribution centres is the same for colleagues doing the same jobs, regardless of their gender. Retail and distribution are very different sectors with their own distinct skill sets and pay rates." This equal pay claim is likely to run on for years, but other retailers and supermarkets will already be considering what it means for them. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
There were some remarkable achievements at the British Olympic marathon trials this morning as top athletes secured their spots in the squad for the Tokyo Games later this year. Chris Thompson won the men's race. He turns 40 next month, yet still managed to set a personal best as he crossed the line at London's Kew Gardens, 40 seconds inside the qualifying time. Just as impressive was the winner of the women's race, Stephanie Davis. She juggles training with a job in finance. She only started running seriously 3 years ago, but will also now be travelling to Tokyo. And to happy news of a different kind now, and the lamb has been given a new lease of life thanks to a modified wheelchair. Named Stephen by staff at a rescue centre in West Yorkshire, the red fox sheep was paralysed in his rear legs shortly after birth. But now he just can't be stopped from scooting all over the farm, as Mark Wilkillam reports.
It's the special piece of kit that has given Stephen the lamb a new lease of life.
And he's off.
But having this spring in his step seemed unlikely just a week ago, because shortly after he was born, Stephen had an abscess. It left his back legs paralysed and his hopes for a full life dashed. That was until he was introduced to his new wheelchair.
At first he was looking at us like, what are you doing? He was a bit confused, especially when we had to put it on and it didn't fit. So obviously I bet to him it was really uncomfortable. But I think as soon as then we adjusted it, and then he was in it, and then he realised he could keep up with his friends, and his brothers and sisters were like, yeah, he's going to be happy. And then, yeah, he's just a bonny little lamb.
A lamb that can now look forward to a happy life at this rescue farm in West Yorkshire.
Where's it on?
Ooh. Cared for by Lewis and Janet, who will make sure he develops as well as he can, whilst Stephen savours his moment in the spotlight.
There's so much attention he's got from every platform going, in the village locally and then obviously with the news. You type in bionic lamb and he's everywhere on Google. So it's just amazing, it really is.
Stephen's wheelchair can be adapted as he grows, so he can carry on enjoying his independence and exploring his home surroundings as much as he likes. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
Fallen in love with Stephen. That is it for now. Julie will be here at 10:20 from me and all the team here. Bye-bye.